Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at the vast unknown. Your heart races, your palms sweat, and a voice inside whispers, "You're not strong enough, you'll fail." Sound familiar? That's your inner critic. It's not the cliff that scares you, it's that voice. Here's the truth: every single one of us battles this voice, the nagging doubts and the fear of failure. But let me ask you, how long will you let it win? If you've ever felt trapped by your thoughts, stuck in a cycle of hesitation, or held back by fear, then this is the speech you cannot afford to miss. The voice of self doubt is one of the most relentless enemies we face in life. It lurks in the back of your mind, waiting for moments of vulnerability to whisper its poisonous words. You're not good enough. You'll never succeed. Why even try? This inner critic thrives on fear and hesitation, feeding off every insecurity and magnifying every mistake until it feels like failure is inevitable. But here's the truth: this voice is not a reflection of who you are. It's a reflection of your fears, and it can be confronted, challenged, and silenced. Recognizing this critic is the first step. Most of us don't even realize how much power we give it. We mistake its words for our own thoughts, believing it has our best interests at heart. It disguises itself as caution or realism, convincing you to stay in your comfort zone and avoid taking risks. But comfort zones don't breed greatness, they breed mediocrity. That inner voice doesn't want you to fail, but it doesn't want you to grow either. His goal is to keep you small, safe, and stagnant. The question you have to ask yourself is this: are you willing to let that voice define your potential? Imagine all the opportunities you've missed because you hesitated, doubted, or let fear win. Imagine the dreams you've postponed because the critic convinced you they were out of reach. Now imagine a life where that voice doesn't dictate your actions, a life where you recognize it for what it is, a barrier to be overcome, and refuse to let it hold you back. Overcoming your inner critic starts with awareness. You need to listen closely to that voice, not to obey it, but to understand it. What are its favorite lines? What situations trigger it the most? Once you know its patterns, you can start challenging its lies. For every "you can't do this," there's a reason why you can. For every "you're not good enough," there's evidence to the contrary. And here's the secret: the critic isn't as smart as it pretends to be. Its power lies in repetition, not truth. But recognition isn't enough. You have to take action. The best way to silence the inner critic is to prove it wrong. Every time you step out of your comfort zone, every time you try something new, every time you face a fear head on, you weaken its grip. Success, no matter how small, is your greatest weapon against self doubt. Each victory, no matter how minor, builds confidence and creates momentum. Remember, the inner critic will never completely disappear. It's part of being human, but you can learn to control it, to turn its negativity into motivation. When it says "you'll never make it," let that fuel your determination to succeed. When it mocks your ambitions, let that be a challenge to prove it wrong. The voice of self-doubt doesn't have to be your enemy. With the right mindset, it can become the very thing that pushes you to grow. Taking control of your mindset is one of the most powerful steps you can take in your journey to overcome the inner critic. The mind is a battlefield, and what you feed it determines your success. If you let negative thoughts take the wheel, they'll steer you in the direction of self-doubt and paralysis. But if you seize control, you can transform your thoughts into a force of resilience and action. Your mindset is the foundation of everything you do. It's how you approach challenges, setbacks, and even opportunities. The inner critic thrives when it senses that you don't have control over your thoughts. It feeds on your vulnerabilities, twisting them into excuses for why you shouldn't move forward, and it thrives on your inaction. The longer you let it dominate your mindset, the harder it becomes to break free. But the truth is, you have the power to change your mental habits. And by doing so, you regain control over your destiny. The first step in taking control is awareness. Notice when negative thoughts arise. Recognize the patterns that trigger the inner critic. Perhaps it's when you're about to take a risk, or maybe it's during moments of uncertainty. Pay attention to how the critic speaks to you. Does it tell you that you're not good enough? Does it remind you of past failures? Once you identify the voice, you can separate it from your own. It's not your voice, it's the product of years of conditioning, fear, and self-doubt. It's a remnant of old thinking that no longer serves you. Taking control of your mindset also involves reframing your thoughts. When you hear the inner critic say, "You're not capable of doing this," challenge it with a counter thought. Instead of giving into fear, remind yourself of past successes. Even the smallest victories count. Think about the times when you've achieved something against the odds, when you've stepped up and faced challenges head on. By refocusing on your strengths and capabilities, you shift your mindset from one of limitation to one of possibility. Another key to taking control is practicing self compassion. The inner critic thrives on self judgment, it feeds on perfectionism and the belief that you must always be flawless. But growth doesn't happen in perfection, it happens in progress. Learning to forgive yourself for mistakes and to treat yourself with kindness will drastically reduce the critic's power. It's not about being perfect, it's about being resilient, learning from setbacks, and continuing forward. Taking control of your mindset is also about consistency. The inner critic doesn't just appear once and then vanish, it's persistent. And so overcoming it requires persistent effort. The more you make the conscious decision to challenge those negative thoughts, the more natural it will become to silence the critic and replace it with empowering thoughts. This might mean affirmations, visualization, or simply taking small, consistent actions toward your goals. The more you act in alignment with a positive mindset, the more you strengthen it and weaken the critic. Bottom line is this: your thoughts are yours to command. If you let fear and doubt dictate your actions, you'll remain stuck in a cycle of inaction. But when you take control, you unlock your potential. You stop waiting for external validation and you start trusting in yourself. You recognize that the inner critic is just noise, a distraction from the real work at hand. Once you shift your mindset, you open up new possibilities, break through barriers, and take charge of your destiny. Fear is one of the most powerful forces that can fuel your inner critic. It has the ability to paralyze, limit, and keep you stuck in a state of hesitation. But fear doesn't have to be your enemy. It can be transformed into the very fuel that propels you forward. Understanding how to turn fear into fuel is a game changer when it comes to silencing the inner critic and moving towards success. But fear often shows up as a defense mechanism. It's a natural response to uncertainty and the unknown, and it's the mind's way of protecting you from potential harm. But in most cases, the fear we experience isn't tied to actual danger. It's tied to the fear of failure, judgment, or rejection. The inner critic uses this fear to hold you back, constantly whispering that you're not ready, that you'll fail, or that it's too risky. Or what if you could flip this narrative and use fear as a motivator rather than a deterrent? The key to turning fear into fuel is reframing it. Instead of seeing fear as a sign to stop, see it as a sign to move. Fear is often the sign that you're stepping into new territory, pushing boundaries and breaking out of your comfort zone. It's a sign that you're growing. When you reframe fear in this way, it becomes a signal to act rather than a reason to hesitate. Rather than seeing the fear as something to avoid, embrace it as part of the process, because growth happens at the edge of comfort and comfort never produces results. To make fear work for you, start by taking small steps toward it. Every time you face something that makes you uneasy, break it down into manageable actions. Fear often feels overwhelming because it exists in the unknown. But once you take action, the fear begins to diminish. Each small step you take builds confidence and weakens the power of fear. The inner critic will always try to exaggerate the worst case scenario, but by taking action, you gain first-hand experience and evidence that your fears are often unfounded. It's also important to remember that fear is not a reflection of your abilities, it's a reflection of your perception. Often we fear things that we've never even experienced, or we imagine the worst possible outcome without any real evidence. The inner critic magnifies this fear by reminding you of every potential failure, amplifying self-doubt. But when you challenge these thoughts by taking action, you begin to rewrite the story. Every time you take a step despite fear, you break down the walls of doubt that the inner critic has built. So fear can also be transformed by focusing on your why. When you remember why you're pursuing your goals in the first place, whether it's personal growth, a sense of purpose, or the drive to achieve something bigger than yourself, it becomes easier to push through fear. When the critic whispers that you're not good enough or that you might fail, your why can drown out that noise and remind you why it's worth facing the fear. Your purpose becomes the engine that drives you forward, even when the fear is heavy. In essence, turning fear into fuel is about shifting your mindset. Instead of allowing fear to be a barrier that keeps you stagnant, let it be the spark that ignites action. Embrace it as a necessary part of your growth. When you challenge your fear head on, the inner critic loses its power. You stop giving it permission to control your decisions and you start taking control of your destiny. The more you face fear, the more you realize that it doesn't have the power to stop you. The only thing that can hold you back is not acting in the face of fear. So instead of letting fear dictate your life, use it as the fuel that propels you to success. Stepping outside of your comfort zone is one of the most powerful actions you can take to overcome your inner critic. The comfort zone is a place where everything feels safe and predictable, but it's also where growth stagnates. In this space, the inner critic thrives because there is no challenge, no risk, and no room to test your limits. It feeds on your fear of the unknown, convincing you that staying in the comfort zone is the best choice. But the truth is, true growth lies outside of that zone, where challenges force you to face your fears head on and push past your self-imposed boundaries. The inner critic loves to keep you in the comfort zone because it's a place of certainty. When you stay within these boundaries, there's little chance of failure or rejection, but there's also little opportunity for success. It's comfortable, but it's also limiting. The critic will constantly reinforce the idea that you're not ready to take the leap, that things could go wrong, and that staying where you are is safer. However, the real danger lies in letting the critic dictate your actions. Comfort, in the end, breeds complacency. The longer you listen to the critic, the harder it becomes to break free from this self-imposed prison. The key to overcoming this is to start small, but to start now. Taking that first step outside your comfort zone doesn't have to mean making giant leaps or drastic changes. It can be as simple as speaking up in a meeting when you'd normally stay silent, trying a new activity that scares you, or challenging an old belief that has held you back. The first step is often the hardest, but is also the most rewarding. Once you make that move, you'll realize that the comfort zone is not as safe as it seems. It's just a mental construct designed to keep you from discovering your true potential. Each time you take action, no matter how small, you are weakening the grip of the inner critic. The critic thrives on fear, and fear is a product of uncertainty. But when you act, when you face the unknown, you build evidence that you can handle discomfort and uncertainty. You learn that fear is not a barrier, but a natural part of the process. And the more you face it, the less power it holds over you. One of the most powerful aspects of stepping out your comfort zone is that it breeds self-confidence. Every time you push through the discomfort and face a new challenge, you prove to yourself that you are capable. The inner critic's voice gets quieter because it can no longer hold you back with its lies and its doubts. You begin to trust yourself more, and that trust becomes the foundation for future growth. The more you stretch yourself, the more comfortable the discomfort becomes. You stop seeing challenges as threats and start seeing them as opportunities to learn, evolve, and expand. Additionally, stepping outside your comfort zone teaches you the value of resilience. Growth doesn't happen without struggle, doesn't come without setbacks or mistakes, but each setback is an opportunity to learn and adjust. It's proof that you're pushing your limits, and that's where the magic happens. The inner critic wants you to believe that failure is a sign of weakness, but failure is simply part of the process. When you face challenges head on and keep moving forward despite the discomfort, you build a resilience that becomes unshakable. In the end, stepping out of your comfort zone is about taking ownership of your journey and choosing to grow despite the fears and doubts that try to hold you back. It's about recognizing that the critic's voice is not the truth, but rather a product of your own fears. When you choose to step forward, you take back control and you begin to see the world of possibility that exists beyond the comfort zone. Every step outside, it makes you stronger, more capable, and more confident. And eventually, the critic becomes nothing more than a faint whisper in the background of your relentless pursuit of growth. Building unshakable confidence is a critical step in silencing your inner critic and taking control of your life. Confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you develop through consistent effort, self-belief, and a commitment to proving to yourself that you are capable of handling whatever comes your way. The inner critic thrives on self-doubt, and it can cripple your ability to act, achieve, and take risks. But when you build your confidence, you effectively shut down the critic's voice because you no longer need validation from it. Confidence is the antidote to fear and self doubt. It is your shield against the negativity that seeks to hold you back. The first step in building unshakable confidence is to stop relying on external validation. So often, we look to others for reassurance, approval, or recognition before we believe in ourselves. The problem with this is that external validation is fleeting, it's dependent on others, and it can easily disappear. If you're always waiting for someone else to tell you that you're good enough, you'll be perpetually dependent on their opinions. But true confidence comes from within. It's about believing in your own abilities, values, and strengths, independent of what others think. The more you rely on internal validation, the more resilient your confidence becomes. To build confidence, you also need to shift your mindset about failure. Many people avoid taking action because they fear failing, but failure is an essential part of growth. It's not a reflection of your abilities, it's simply feedback. Every failure is an opportunity to learn, adapt, and improve. When you accept failure as part of the journey, you free yourself from the paralyzing grip of perfectionism. Then the survival thing can flourish. That is because every failure is an opportunity to learn, adapt, and improve. When you accept failure as part of the journey, you free yourself from the paralyzing grip of perfectionism. You start to see mistakes not as something to be feared, but as valuable lessons that get you closer to success. The inner critic thrives when you fear failure, but when you embrace it as a stepping stone, the critic loses its power over you. Another key element of building confidence is taking consistent, small actions that push you outside your comfort zone. Confidence isn't built overnight, it's developed through repeated experiences of doing what scares you. Each time you take action, no matter how small, you build your belief in yourself. You start to accumulate evidence that you can handle challenges, make decisions, and navigate uncertainty. The more you prove to yourself that you can succeed in difficult situations, the more confident you become. The inner critic may try to tell you that you're not good enough, but your actions will provide the counter evidence that you are. Surrounding yourself with a supportive environment is also crucial for building confidence. The people around you can either uplift or drain you. When you're surrounded by individuals who believe in you and encourage you to take risks, it's much easier to silence the inner critic. Positive reinforcement and constructive feedback will help you grow, while toxic or negative influences will only amplify self doubt. The energy and mindset of those around you can have a profound impact on your own confidence. Choose to spend time with people who empower you, who challenge you to be better, and who cheer you on as you take steps toward your goals. Lastly, self compassion plays a significant role in building confidence. Being kind to yourself, especially during times of struggle or failure, strengthens your self worth. The inner critic often thrives on harsh self judgment, but self compassion allows you to treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer a friend. When you stop beating yourself up over mistakes and instead show yourself the grace to learn and grow, your confidence grows naturally. You realize that you are worthy of success and happiness, and you stop seeking validation from external sources. This internal kindness gives you the emotional resilience to keep moving forward no matter what challenges you face. Building unshakable confidence is a process, a commitment to yourself and your growth. It's about silencing the inner critic by reinforcing your belief in your abilities, your potential, and your worth. It's about embracing challenges, learning from mistakes, and trusting in yourself to navigate life's uncertainties. As you build this confidence, you'll find that the critic's voice grows quieter and quieter, and you'll become unstoppable in your pursuit of your goals. Committing to the journey of personal growth is one of the most important steps in overcoming your inner critic. Too often, we approach change and growth with a sense of urgency or impatience, expecting instant results. But the reality is that true transformation is a process, one that requires dedication, resilience, and above all, persistence. The inner critic thrives on the belief that we should achieve success quickly and easily, but when we commit to the journey, we accept that growth is not linear. It's filled with ups and downs, setbacks and breakthroughs, but every step forward is a step toward greater strength and capability. The inner critic thrives when we expect perfection from ourselves. It whispers that we should be further along by now, that we're running out of time, or that we're not doing enough. But the journey is not about perfection, it's about progress. When you commit to personal growth, you give yourself permission to take imperfect steps. You recognize that it's not the end result that matters most, but the effort, the learning, and the persistence you show along the way. The growth requires patience and an understanding that it's okay to make mistakes and stumble. Each failure is not a sign of defeat, it's an essential part of the process. A crucial aspect of committing to the journey is setting realistic expectations. The inner critic often thrives in environments where we set overly ambitious goals without taking into account the time, effort, and resources required to achieve them. By setting goals that are challenging yet achievable, you create a roadmap for success that doesn't overwhelm you. The critic's voice is loudest when we try to take on too much too soon. But when you break your goals into manageable steps and celebrate each small win, you take away the power that the critic holds over you. Every victory, no matter how small, is evidence of your growth and progress. And equally important is the ability to stay focused on the long term. It's easy to get distracted by the immediate rewards or by setbacks that seem to slow your progress. But when you commit to the journey, you make the conscious choice to keep going regardless of the challenges you face. The inner critic wants you to quit when things get tough, but persistence is the antidote. When you continue to show up, even when the going gets hard, you prove to yourself that you're stronger than the critic's voice. Every time you keep going, despite the doubts and fears, you build resilience and fortify your belief in your ability to succeed. Part of the journey is learning to embrace discomfort. The critic often convinces us to avoid anything that feels difficult or uncomfortable, but growth happens in the discomfort. The more you expose yourself to challenges and the unknown, the more you expand your capabilities. Stepping outside your comfort zone is essential for personal development. It's through discomfort that you learn new skills, build resilience, and discover your true potential. The critic may try to convince you that discomfort equals failure, but in reality, discomfort is a sign that you're pushing yourself to become something greater. Another key to committing to the journey is consistency. It's easy to be motivated when things are going well, but true growth happens when you commit to doing the work day in and day out, even when motivation wanes. The inner critic thrives when we give up after facing obstacles or when we get discouraged by slow progress. But consistency is the antidote. When you commit to showing up, even on the days when you don't feel like it, you build momentum. Over time, this momentum leads to breakthroughs. Small, consistent actions compound and lead to massive results. The critic doesn't stand a chance against the power of consistency. Lastly, part of committing to the journey is accepting that it's okay to ask for help. The inner critic often tells us that we should be able to do everything on our own, that seeking help is a sign of weakness. But in reality, growth often happens through collaboration, support, and guidance from others. Whether it's a mentor, a coach, or a community of like-minded individuals, the right support system can accelerate your progress and provide the encouragement you need to keep moving forward. The inner critic may try to convince you that asking for help means you're not strong enough, but the truth is that growth is a team effort, and there's no shame in seeking support. Committing to the journey means staying the course, even when the path gets tough. It's about persistence, patience, and the belief that every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. When you commit to the journey, you take away the power that the inner critic holds over you and replace it with an unwavering belief in your ability to achieve your goals. You stop waiting for perfection and instead, you embrace the process of becoming the best version of yourself. Like every challenge, every setback, every lesson learned becomes an integral part of your growth. And over time, you'll look back and realize that the journey itself has made you stronger, wiser, and more capable than you ever thought possible.